Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast Channels 6 and 22. Channel 6 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 8, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.
afternoon. I am Vice Chair Esther Olson Murphy. I'll be running this meeting this evening as our chair, Bob Pryor, is in a butter to the property. First, I will introduce the members of the board. To my far right is Laura Davies. To my immediate right is Teresa Page. To my far left is Mark Lemos, and to my immediate left is Kevin Baum. So this is tonight. Oh, let me find my thing. Tonight we're gonna. There you go. Tonight's new business is the continuation of application of the Riverwoods Company of Exeter for a variance from Article 4, Section 4.3, Schedule 2 to exceed the maximum height requirements in the R1 low-density residential zoning district for the proposed construction of a new health center building, and a variance from Article 6, Section 6.1.2D to permit parking in portions of the driveway within the required 100-foot landscape buffer. The subject properties are located at 7 Riverwoods Drive, 5 Timber Lane, 6 White Oak Drive, 78 Kingston Road, and 67 Kingston Road in the R1 low-density residential zoning district, tax map parcels 91-23, 98-37, 80-18, 97-29, and 97-44, all now merged via voluntary lot merger, ZBA case 24-4. That's a long one.
It is. It's long.
Well done, though.
At the end of our last meeting, we had closed public session. At that time, we were ready to deliberate, but we had the time crunch. Since that time, we have received additional photos only from Attorney Summers in Riverwoods showing the location in the winter in different seasons, essentially. And we have also received a letter from a butter, Mrs. Hooton, indicating that she was unable to attend the last meeting. However, she was upset that it made it sound as though she approved of this construction, which is not the case. She had met with Riverwoods but did not approve what their plans were. We wanted to make sure that was corrected in the record, so it is not, she does not feel that the approval is based on her.
I'm here.
Yeah, problem is we've already closed public session,
Yes,
so
I know.
people can't speak. So I just want to make sure that you got in the record saying you were not
Thank you.
part of it. And Attorney Summers in her packet did also indicate that she had spoken to you and you were not, it was shown improperly that you were not in favor of it. So I'll make sure everybody knows Ms. Hooton's not for it. Okay. So are we ready to start our deliberations?
Sure. Yeah.
So we have 2 variances are being requested. Should we start with the height requirement? Request.
Sounds good.
Would somebody like to go over the variance criteria? Calm down. Not everybody at once. I have the cheat sheet if anybody would like it.
I'll read something if you want.
What's that?
Is this the variance criteria? Is this
Well,
what
we
we're
have the
talking
cheat sheet here,
Yeah.
which I didn't have, so if you want to,
about? Okay.
why don't we go, you want to just
Yeah.
go through discussion point by
Yeah, as we
point?
go through, we can discuss each one.
Okay. Well, I can start. So the first 2 criteria are considered together, and those are whether the variance is not, that the variance is not contrary to the public interest and that the spirit of the ordinance is preserved. Generally, the test is whether the proposed use, that it must not conflict with the explicit or implicit purposes of the zoning ordinance and must not alter the essential character of the neighborhood or threaten the public health, safety, or welfare or otherwise injure public rights. So, with respect to the height only, the question is, I mean, to me, I don't think there's a real health, safety, welfare issue here. As far as height, really that's a blocking out of light or inability for, emergency services. No evidence that either of that will occur. That there's enough distance from budding properties. I don't think there's any concern with light. Certainly no evidence, and this would still not be taller than other buildings in the town. So no evidence that there would be any public safety issues. I think the real question is whether it alters the essential character of the neighborhood. This is largely a residential neighborhood. It is somewhat unique because of the campus and inconsistency. It sort of shifts the dynamic because of the other sort of more institutional buildings, but it is still within a residential neighborhood and pushed, to the outskirts of, or to the edge. It's actually in the middle now, I guess, technically, but it's not within the center of the two sort of primary campus areas with the merged lot. So, I think that's the question for discussions, whether, that changes the essential character of the neighborhood. Here, I think it's somewhat a question between the flat roof versus gabled roof. I think the gabled roof does fit in better. With the neighborhood, this certainly is taller than anything else in that immediate area.
And much more massive.
Yeah, much.
Massive. So, that's a big concern with the height. It's not just the height, it's the height of a massive structure.
Oh, in terms, yeah, agreed.
The length of it.
Agreed.
The length, yeah.
So, that's, to me, makes a big difference on
Yes.
how we look at that.
Yeah, and certainly that is not consistent with with any of the surrounding properties.
Yeah. I think 44 feet in total, that close to the road makes it much different in the property area.
I agree that with the length of the building, that the added roof space for that continuous line does stand out. And I'm looking at Exhibit 2 of the additional materials, and I think that depicts that it really, from that corner, looks like a block. It's not as if the height is limited to the footprint of a residential home.
And it's gabled, so it matches more, but the peak of the roof is still flat.
True.
So it's got some architectural adage there, but it's still, in the end, it doesn't look like a house because it does have a flat top either way.
My recollection of the public comments regarding height was that, and I did review the minutes, was that more people did not want to see it than people wanted architectural consistency. So from that perspective, I think that was the input from the neighborhood.
Yeah, I remember saying nobody seemed, well, it's okay with the gable, but the flat, I wouldn't want it. We always seem to limit it as much as possible.
Yeah, and the plans can still go through with the flat roof because it will hit 35. So.
Okay, do we want to move on to the next criteria? I don't think we're voting on anything now, just discussion. So the next is that substantial justice is done, and that's a weighing test between the benefit to the applicant versus the benefit of the applicant shouldn't be outweighed by the harm to the general public or other individuals. I think it's the question of whether they can have the preferred architecture and additional additional height versus the aesthetic impact to the neighbors.
Yeah, I'm not sure if preferred architecture is
Meets the level.
justifiable over the neighborhood having an even more massive building hanging over them, especially since they can still have the building without it.
Yeah.
Values of surrounding properties are not diminished. The note is that expert testimony on this question is not conclusive, but cannot be ignored. We can consider other evidence of effect on property values, including personal knowledge. I think this one there's an appraisal, there's evidence.
The appraisal was well-written. It wasn't really an appraisal, it was an opinion letter. There was no valuation, there was no evaluation of market data. But I agree basically with the general conclusion that he came to about the property values. I think he also concluded it doesn't alter the essential character of the neighborhood, and I don't think he really addressed that in his letter, and I didn't see any support for that conclusion.
Yeah, I also think that's beyond the scope of his expertise. I mean,
It's not expert testimony at that point, it's opinion.
it's opinion. I mean, he's got expertise in property appraisal and
Exactly.
valuation. So, yeah, I mean, I would, my general feeling is that criteria is met. I'd be hard pressed to say it's not in the absence of any contrary evidence.
I could go along with that.
I would agree with that the applicant met the burden of demonstrating that it's more likely than not that there wouldn't be a negative impact to surrounding property values.
And then next is the hardship criteria, which is literal enforcement of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship. Unnecessary hardship means because of the special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area. There's no fair and substantial relationship between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision at issue and the specific application in this case, and that the proposed use is reasonable. There's an alternative, but I don't think they argued it, and I don't think it applies. Certainly there are special conditions of this property. It is unique, given just the size and the layout. I think we can find special conditions. I have more trouble with the next prong with the specific application in this case. The purpose of height restrictions are to avoid large, massive buildings, blocking view sheds, looming over other properties. And unfortunately, I mean, despite the size, and this is where I struggle, so despite the size of this property, and I recognize that it is restricted significantly by conservation and by wetlands, it's really it's sited right in the spot where it has the most impact to abutters.
Well, yeah, well said.
And again, it can be constructed without relief. So the primary reasoning for the relief is really aesthetic. And I think based on the abutter testimony and based on what everyone had said previously, I mean, it's the weighing the aesthetic of the gables versus the massing. And I think that massing is going to stick out. And the additional renderings are really appreciated and helpful, but they do, I mean, not surprisingly, it's going to be there. There's no hiding this building. And then again, whether the proposed use is reasonable. I mean, the use itself, I think, it's consistent with the use, but I think it's the second prong, which is the application, in this instance. So, any other?
The applicant noted that just because they're asking for a variance, that doesn't implicitly make the use unreasonable. But I think we have to look at what the special condition is and a nexus between the reasonableness of the use. And that, I'm grappling with that because the special condition really is the size and the magnitude of the property, which seems to go against the idea that there isn't a way to work within the variance as it exists.
Yes, and I mean, and recognizing that there, I mean, is why I asked the question is, and you can see it in the plan, there are significant wetlands, there is conservation area, and that's appreciated. But there are still significant space on this lot. And, including the areas that were currently being used and are going to be converted. So
You mean within the 3 buildings?
within the buildings.
Right.
And I know that doesn't work for the plan. I'm not suggesting that does, but there is certainly space available. So,
Okay. I think we discussed that pretty clearly.
Does anybody have a motion that will include outlining why it would be approved or not approved?
I should have really made notes.
does anyone, I'd prefer not to do all the talking.
You got another one
You're
coming.
doing so well. Let me just think about this for a second if you want. Okay.
You're doing a great job.
Thank you. Laura, are you putting thoughts together? or
I
are you-
am.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I should have been doing this during the whole time, so give me a sec.
No, I'm happy to. I just didn't want to sit here staring at you if you were.
Okay.
Tablet now instead.
And feel free to offer thoughts on this. So I move that we deny the motion for a variance from from Article 4, Section 4.3, Schedule 2, to exceed the maximum height requirement based on the not meeting the variance criteria of, one, being in the public interest and not based primarily on altering the essential character of the neighborhood, and also requirement 5, B, that the proposed use is a reasonable one. Again, that it seems to be the consensus that the variance would alter the essential character of the neighborhood and not be a reasonable use. Did I cover that? Is that,
So,
okay.
I'll second.
second.
Or you
Okay.
you go ahead.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 So the motion is not approved. Well, the motion is approved. The variance is not approved 5-0 for the
Height.
height on Article 4, Section 4.3, Schedule 2. So next up, we need to discuss the variance for Article 6, Section 6.1.2D to permit parking in portions of the driveway within the required 100-foot landscape buffer.
Anybody want to?
Well, and just to refresh my memory, it was the notice reference parking, but we were also talking about some other.
So
They had the pickleball court and the dog park in the
yeah,
buffer as well.
In the buffer.
Not
There's
just
a
that, so
parking-
the
there's
service
parking
drive
spots
that
there.
wraps around the west
And the
side
right.
of.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, 'cause that,
So if I'm remembering correctly, there were a handful of parking spaces on the side abutting the Hooten property
yes.
that would be within the buffer.
And the
As-
And the ones on the back
Yeah,
side.
as well as White Oak, which is existing there presently, but would be moved and is considered an access road. And then the loop to the other side of the property where the pickleball courts are would be a service road also within the buffer. And then I believe a handful of parallel parking spaces on that back loop service
Yes.
road
One,
as
two.
well.
Well, and I believe in addition, we were wondering whether the actual dog park and pickleball court should be in the landscape buffer as well, since they aren't really landscape buffer.
And there was discussion of moving those from where they presently are within,
It's already in the
buffer.
buffer.
Yeah.
They are already in the buffer.
They are.
They
but will
are,
move
yeah.
slightly.
So they are
Yeah.
relocated.
We were wondering how they got there. Was there any
Yeah.
variance about that?
There's also a place where you can pull off and there's parking by the pickleball courts and the dog park that is currently there,
Yes,
which is also in the buffer, and I didn't know how that got there either.
not sure.
So,
That
Yeah,
is
I-
proposed to go away, though. That parking
Yeah.
is not meant to stay.
okay.
What I don't recall is if that was in the approved site plan or not.
Doug, did you have any further information about that? No?
No.
Okay. So, anyway.
Why do I
Do
suspect
you
you're
want to
talking again?
talk?
We want to talk through it more before we
Sure.
start going
So-
through those, or?
We can go. So let's go through the criteria. I won't go, it's public interest and spirit of the ordinance. Again, the test is whether it alters the essential character of the neighborhood or threatens the public health, safety, or welfare, or otherwise injures public rights. This I have left, this doesn't, I don't think this has the same impact. As far as impact on the neighborhood, it is buffered. There's probably some view because of the wetland to the, am I getting my directions? To the east?
That's north.
North, that way.
That's north. So, well, but I mean to the Houghton lot and to the, and then to the Jolly Rand Trail. I think it's still going to be fairly limited visually. I wasn't personally bothered by the idea of moving. The pickleball courts, the recreational area is already in the buffer. It would be a relocation. And so, I don't think there's any threat to the public health, safety, or welfare. The question again, I think this is mostly a visual concern, and it's whether it alters the essential character of the neighborhood.
Yeah. One issue I have with the spirit of the ordinance is that we do have Article 6.1.2, specifically D, which one gives us some information on what the purpose is behind this particular section that applies. So providing adequate division or transition from abutting land uses is one, and then having vegetation that's sufficient in size to shield the development from abutting properties. And then it concludes with no dwelling, accessory structure, collector or service roads or parking areas shall be permitted within the designated buffer area. Access roads are permitted to cross the buffer area. But because of the prohibition on service roads and parking, I
Because
think
that's
we
what they're
might-
looking for the variance for.
Right, but it's so specific to the
Yep.
situation and to the extent of, 11 plus parking spaces. I worry about the legality of granting the variance and that could potentially be undermining the purpose.
This is a special exception use, and I know we're not voting on the use, but this is a special exception use that is very different than all the other permitted uses in the neighborhood. And it's much more massive in scale. That is why the 100-foot buffer was included. It was specifically included to prevent this type of thing. And this is not just in the back corner where it's not going to bother anybody. It's very close to many abutters. It's very visible, and I'm like really opposed to any infringement on the buffer because this scale building is massive, and it really doesn't even belong in this neighborhood. And they're getting in under a technicality with this being part of the existing use that's already approved. Fine, we'll see about that. But the point is that it should not be, it's a massive scale on a small area of the site, and I don't think we should reduce the buffer.
And it also goes with the entire lot. It's not just this location.
Yeah, the entire parcel is supposed to have a 100-foot buffer,
so
and
now
they've
they can-
met that elsewhere. And where they really need it, here in this tiny portion where they're trying to squeeze this massive building in, I don't think we should waive the benefit of the buffer.
It's not
At all.
a feature really of the landscape that we're working around where there's a pinch here or there. It really is a good portion of the buffer on two sides. And to note that the portion of the property where there's a handful of parking spaces adjacent to the Hooten property, there's not support for the application on that particular side.
See, I actually find that one a little less troubling because because of the
Built in,
wetlands,
yeah.
I think there is going to be a natural buffer that there'll be additional land preserved because of that finger that's coming up. So that actually sort of troubles me a little less. Although your points are taken, and I certainly, Laura, I certainly respect the point of preserving it in this case. But that just bothers me a little less. The buffer on the other side, the woods are there, but the trail is there as well, which is an amenity. So I just, I don't need to. I'm not trying to argue the point. That's my counter to that. It didn't bother me as much. So.
So,
I mean, we're all entitled to our various opinions.
Yeah.
We
yeah,
have to all
that's
agree.
why we have committees. But this actually bothered me more than the height variance. Consider almost because, like, at one of these points, the actual building is almost encroaching on the buffer. At that, it's not, but it's like
It's close.
It's like 7 feet from the buffer. And yeah, that is a part where the property line, or 9 feet 1 inch, where it cuts in. And that's at the one point where like the actual road is only 17 feet away from the actual property line. The part that I almost think there could be an argument made probably by somebody smarter than I am about public safety to the wetlands. And I know they'll go before Concom and all those other, the DEPS and stuff like that. But one of the reasons I think that we put these in is not just for sight, but is also for blocking these kind of structures, but is also for protecting the property line, the other people's property. And 17 feet is kind of like right next to a roadway that comes through. So like if you go to plow that area, and you very well might be pushing snow over on the next property line.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, just the access road, though, is not, that is permitted.
Well, they're
That-
moving it.
but it is, they can move, I mean, the access road is permitted, it's the accessory, the road
Service
and the
road.
parking.
And the parking, yeah.
So, I mean, so that could stay, I mean, they could pull all the parking out, they could pull the back road out, and that could still stay in that layout. Right.
Still, it's like 20,000
I'm
square.
not sure I'm
Yeah,
100%
hard-
clear on where you're
hard
talking
top.
about 17 feet, though.
It's that corner right by the access road,
This,
lower right, near the turn where it juts.
So you see the entrance into the front of the building?
yes.
With the, right at that corner, across from that entrance, where the buffer is?
Right here, if you look over it.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, yeah, good point.
And you are right, that the access road
Okay.
is permitted to cross the buffer area,
I see.
but here it almost operates entirely in the buffer area.
Yeah. Look, are we, sorry, I don't want to cut off, but
No, no.
we're ready to move on. So, substantial justice is done. Again, that's the weighing test between the harm to the applicant and benefit to the general public. So the harm to the applicant in this case is the loss of parking space, loss of that, of the
perimeter road.
Perimeter, yeah.
Service road.
Service road. Benefit to the, benefit to the public is preservation of the buffer. Value of the surrounding properties are not diminished.
Was everybody done with that one?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I guess my thing is with that, they may be able to finagle the parking without it, but they couldn't put the building there without that road in the back, because that's all the deliveries and everything. So without that road, their building is done. So that'd be,
Well, it would.
Well-
they could, or they could shrink the
You'd
building.
have to change it,
Yeah.
or deliveries
At that
go to the
scale.
side, or-
Yeah.
That building.
Yeah.
I think that's the access to underground parking.
That's
No.
on
Is it
that side.
That's on this side?
Yeah.
Okay. Generators and stuff.
Okay, everybody, that was just me, so you're free to continue.
Sorry. Values of surrounding properties are not diminished. Sort of the same comment as I did on the height variance there. We do have the appraiser's opinion. And, no contrary evidence. So in my mind, that criteria is met, or certainly, I don't feel that we have enough to rebut the expert testimony.
Agreed.
So, and then the hardship, litter enforcement of the ordinance will result in unnecessary hardship because of special conditions that distinguish it from other properties in the area. I think special conditions are met given the size and shape of this lot, and then in specific to this request, primarily the parking. They are limited in what they can do because of the gas easement, and inability to put parking over it, or even the requirement to bend that access road. And then I also think that the presence of wetlands that sort of further restrict the non-buffer areas available. The question, though, is whether which is the next step, which is whether there's fair and substantial relationship between the general purposes of the ordinance and its specific application here. And I think Laura spoke to that previously.
Well, and also you spoke to whether there are special conditions of the property, and you said that there is space elsewhere on this very big campus. And so that's a counterbalance to the gas line and the wetlands, which is that there are other places. So, again, I feel this is a very big development in a very small part of the site, and that the impact to the neighborhood and the, you know, the harm to the neighborhood is, it's just not a reasonable request.
Well, and it gets down to, it gets down to the size of the building.
Yes.
Which I understand the reasoning for it, but that's what pushes everything out into the buffer. That's, that is not, yes, they have the, they can build that size building, but there are other constraints, and this is where this is where it impacts. So, yeah, I mean, and again, I think speaking to the reasoning for the buffer, given the nature of this type of use, there was a desire to keep additional visual buffers and other, not just visual.
Noise.
But noise, other buffers to the surrounding property and
Light.
including pickleball, which is shockingly noisy.
Yes.
But,
I looked into that. If you guys said stuff, there's people talking about like almost going insane because of the sounds.
yeah, it's across, I have a court across from my office across the pond, and I'm shocked at how noisy it is.
It's something about the frequency of the sound, too, from what I remember hearing.
I don't think that is the reason
No, no.
in itself.
It's not just
but it is.
pickleball.
But it is a fact. I mean, and kidding aside, I do think it is not just the I keep pointing to aesthetic impacts, but it's not just. That's not the only reason for the buffer.
Right.
I do agree that the gas line does contribute to special features of this property, but I'm still finding that the restriction as applied to this property does serve the purpose of the ordinance in a fair and substantial way.
Does anybody have anything else? Or does somebody want to shoot for a motion on this one as well? You're getting looks.
I did all the talking.
You're so good at it.
Like it's
Well,
what you
we'll
do.
see if we agree on all of the reasoning, but would move to deny the variance requested from Article 6, Section 6.12D to permit parking and portions of the driveway within the required 100-foot landscape buffer. Failure of the request specifically due to failure to meet the requirements of 1 and 2. The variance is not contrary to the public interest and the spirit of the ordinance is observed, as well as failure to meet criteria 5 for unnecessary hardship.
I would second. Or do we need,
Did we want more detail on why they weren't?
oh,
I mean, I think
Or is it significant enough in the minutes?
it's in the minutes.
Okay.
You seconded.
I will second, yes.
All who are in favor to deny approval of this variance?
Aye.
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 Chair says aye, so variance for Article 6, Section 6.1.2D is also denied by the board, 5, none.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
That was. Is this yours?
Yes.
I knew it came this way.
It
Didn't
danced.
even know that I had it.
Oh, this thing's great.
Sorry, yeah.
This thing's great.
I was like, oh, I gotta get this laminated now.
We're not done, don't get excited.
Everybody else.
For your letter.
When I was reading it over, they should have
We're still in session.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Still-
We have a couple more things to do, so shouldn't take us long, so you guys could discuss in the hallway if you'd like.
Somebody wait for us by his eyes.
So, we have 2 sets of minutes to review. First one is from February 20th, 2024.
Do we want to do them out of? I see Bob is still here. Do we want to do them out of order so he can join, or
He's never been in the meeting, so he can't join.
On the
February
He was
20th.
The 20th. We have two
on the
sets of meetings.
20th. That's why I was thinking, do it out of
Do we
order.
do it
I
next?
may be making this harder than it is. It's
I just what I'm
minutes.
saying is, he was never on the board to begin with. He was out today, so I don't know if he can come in to do
Oh,
minutes.
good point.
I-
Good point.
Okay.
All right.
I don't see Bob. Okay,
Okay.
Fair
so we'll
enough.
keep going with
I am
February.
complicating it.
Okay.
So the people who were present was myself, Teresa, Kevin, Laura, and Mark. How convenient. Did anybody find anything?
I did not.
I didn't. They do a really good job.
She is
great.
fantastic,
Fantastic.
the best.
Is that Johanna that did it?
Yes.
Yeah, she's really good.
Joanna Martin is amazing.
That should
Yes.
make it into the minutes. As it should every month.
We're going to
She
close
does
every
a great
meeting with
job.
that.
Yes.
So do I have a motion for the minutes?
I motion to approve the minutes from March 19th.
We're not looking.
No,
at
from
March
February
19th?
20th.
February 20th.
February 20th then. I apologize.
You still approve them?
I approve those as well.
Okay.
Make a motion.
So
Okay, so there-
Did someone second?
yes, we have a
Oh,
second.
okay. Gotcha.
Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So those are approved, 5-0. Next.
now,
Uh-oh.
I will admit, I didn't finish reading these minutes. I'm very sorry. I did not.
Not gonna lie, I didn't either.
Time manage very well on that. But I would like to say I don't see the statement you read at the beginning explaining about the impact of the appeal.
I think it's,
Is it in here?
I think it's in here, but it was later than I was expecting to see it, but,
So
Because
I
I
wanted
kinda
to
started
read that
out-
carefully, and I didn't see it, so I
Or
want.
did I bring it up when people started to speak?
I think it was right before deliberations maybe, but let me,
Because I think that needs to be in here.
Bye,
Thank
Doug.
you. Bye, Doug.
Bye, Doug.
Don't hit my truck.
give me a
Yeah, I
second,
agree.
because I think it is.
Is it when we started deliberate?
I don't think it's where we started deliberation. I think it's when people are going to come up and speak.
Yeah, it is. It's at line 333.
Okay.
Ms.
thank you.
Olson Murphy opened for public comment. She said the ZBA is aware of pending litigation involving the merger, et cetera.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
See, she's good. Even she
We're
knew where
on
it
it.
belonged.
37.
Yeah.
Did anybody finish them in?
I did finish them, and
Okay.
I did it with video in the background, so.
Oh, okay, yeah, I'm trusting you.
I'm
So I didn't
fairly
get to finish
certain,
them.
certain that we're good,
So do we have a motion on the March 19th notes?
I will move to approve the March 19th, 2024 minutes as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 I'm going to abstain since I didn't finish reading them.
Aren't you fancy?
I know.
Did you?
Okay, so the March 19th minutes are approved. 4 yeas and 1 person abstaining.
Correct.
I think that's all we have on the schedule. Is there-
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Unless you had something else to say.
Well, that went
Too late.
much faster than I thought.
Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast channels 6 and 22. Channel 6 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 8, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report, with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.